Good morning. So we are sewing today. Um, okay, no worries. Okay, no worries, Donna. We're glad you made it. Okay. So we are going to be sewing the Hello Spring round pillow kit. And I had a really good time with this. I really enjoyed it. It was a fun project to do. And some of them I really love. And some of them I'm like, nah, they're nice, but I can live without it. This one I really enjoyed. So, and I think that we learned anytime we add sewing to it, I think it's a good idea because I know some of you are scared of your sewing machine. You love your embroidery machine, but man, you add sewing to it and you guys run panicked. So, I'm glad that it has some sewing in it. So right now I am warming up my iron because I am going to take this polka dotted piece of fabric. If you flip it over, you'll see that it has a piece of SF101 that you're going to fuse to the back. If you've not used this before, feel it. The rough side, it has a rough side and it has a smooth side. The rough side is the side with the glue. So that's the side that you're going to put down to your fabric. If you have some best press handy, I always like to press my fabrics with a little best press and get any wrinkles or shipping folds or anything out of them before I fuse this on. So that's what I'm going to be doing right over here. I'm going to drag it. I can probably drag it over here. I hope everyone had a really nice holiday season. It's nice to get back to work. It's nice to get back to normal, I guess. Not that I don't enjoy it. It's just that for some of us, it's stressful, huh? It's a lot of stuff, especially if you have a lot of family. It's a lot of stuff. All right. A little best press on here. I have my iron set to high and I do have the steam on. All right. The thing that's nice is if you warm the fabric up, sometimes the stick from your SF101 starts to happen before you even hit it with an iron because your fabric is kind of hot. And then when you adhere for this, it's not this. It's picking a section, holding, counting to about 5 or 6. Because what you really want to do is really stick the glue down and then just move to another spot. You're not ironing, you're pressing. So the idea of this is to actually adhere the glue. And, going back and forth really fast doesn't really do that. And then check your edges. I always like to check the edges, make sure everything's fused. This is your stabilizer to help you with puckering. So you want to make sure that it's adhered everywhere. And then I always turn over and, just kind of hold it up and look if there's any puckers, if there's any bubbles, that means that it didn't get stuck in that place. And then I'm going to do the same thing from the front. And I think that this part's kind of important because here's what happens. Most irons have holes in them. And right where those holes are, you're not getting quite as much firmness. You're getting heat, but you're not getting as much firmness. So if you're just doing this to fuse your SF101, you may not be fusing it all the way. So just, pressing down, holding the iron in one place, giving it a good press. I mean, don't burn your fabric, but, give it a few seconds. And then go ahead and let that item cool before you pick it up off the board or off whatever. Give it a second to cool off. All right. So I am we're starting on page 7. On page 6 gives you a nice idea of, the numbers here in the diagram for what colors are which. so that you can actually make a decision if you don't have like the glide thread, or like here I'm using the store thread, the exquisite. So I'm going to match it as best as I can. But you know what? If you don't have blue in the room that you want to use it and you want to use purple there, just do it. It's your project. It doesn't matter. All right, so it's 4 parts. It's part 1 is stitching the pillow center. Part 2 is sewing the border to the center. Part 3 is attaching the zipper, and part 4 is sewing the pillow together. So I have medium cutaway stabilizer in my hoop. I have prepared the center fabric, and I'm going to go ahead and move the computer and you over to the sewing machine. So I'm going to be turning the camera off for a moment while I swing around, just so that you guys don't need Dramamine. Hold on. This has quite a bit of stitching in it, so I want to get the camera angle and stuff right for you so that we don't have to keep adjusting it. Still have it off. Don't worry. I'm coming back. I promise. There we are. All right, so I'm sewing on the luminaire this morning. Now let's move your bright shining faces over here. I'm so happy to see everybody. I did a lot of stitching while the store was closed. I have some fun stuff to show you guys coming up. But I'm always glad for that break. All right, so I'm going to bring up my design first. And so I'm going to touch embroidery. I didn't save it to the pocket of the machine, but I do have the USB in there. And your design should look like this. And it should say 8x12. And if you're not sure, up here at the top, it should say 7.77 by 7.77. And then go ahead and select set. All right, so all of these are color stops, and we're not changing anything, so we can just touch embroidery. So for those of you that maybe are using a newer machine, or you're not used to all of the buttons and numbers and stuff on your machine, if you look at the top row on most machines, Baby Lock Brother, you'll see the size of the design, the stitch count. Right here is your color stops. I call them color stops because it may not necessarily be a different color. It's just that the machine has to stop. So the digitizer assigns a different color to it so that the machine will stop. So we have 17 color stops. We have 47 minutes stitch out, which is why we have 3 hours for this class instead of 2, because we have a very long stitch out. All right, so let me grab, I'm gonna use just plain white bobbin thread, pre-wound embroidery bobbin. So I'm gonna go ahead and put that in. I have a 7511 embroidery needle in. I get a lot of questions about needles all the time. I'm not one of those that buys 10 tons of different types of needles. I have about 3 needles that are my favorites. I love a 7511 embroidery needle, either anti-glue or micro point, either one. I like that for pretty much all my embroidery. If I'm going to be using some kind of thread that's different, like a thick thread, or maybe metallic thread, or maybe monofilament thread, then I'll go to a 90 top stitch. And I do that because the 90 top stitch has a bigger eye, and those fussier threads tend to pass through them. And the other one I have a lot is the 80 microtex that they put in the machine when they service the machine, for 2 reasons. If you have to keep going between embroidery and sewing, embroidering, sewing, embroidering, sewing, that 80 needle will serve you well. You won't have to, keep changing out the needle. So do I have other fussy needles? I have a few, but really not that many. Those are my go-tos. All right, so the first step, if we're looking at the direction, is to stitch the center placement lines. And I noticed that on the sketch here that it just has the little striped box, and that means to use whatever, use a thread that doesn't have a lot of won't show a lot. So I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to grab a couple of the threads that I'm going to need next. So after I tack this down, I'm going to need I think the dark green, the medium green, and the light green. So I'm going to go grab those, and then I'll grab as I go along. All right, so here's mine. Dark green, medium green, and light green. That light green's kind of neon, huh? But I think it's the best I have to offer. Oh, maybe this one. I'll do that. I have one thing of glide there. So I have sometimes a hard time with these dots and diamonds and stuff like that. So I usually try to make a note with a pen on the, on the paper or on the directions, which I haven't done yet, but I'm just going to grab some white embroidery thread to do my my placement. Or my favorite go-to for applique and stuff is also a light gray. So at my house, all my applique placement lines are done with the same light gray, because the light gray will almost fade into any fabric you stitch it on, but it gives you enough that you can see it. So I'm going to just go ahead and leave this on for applique. I love applique. It's one of my favorite things to do. So I do a lot of it. And I do a lot of it on my multi-needle machine. So I have on needle number 10, I have a color called Starlight, which is just maybe 2 gray shades past white. It's very light. But what happens is no matter what fabric I'm stitching on, I can see my applique placement line. After that, it doesn't matter because it's going to get covered. So that's nice. I don't have to ever change that thread color when I'm doing appliques. All right. My hoop's on. How we doing? Everybody good? Questions so far? We good? We're using, let's admit people. Hello, come on in. We are using the 8x12 hoop. We are using the design for the 8x12. We are on step number 4, color stop 1. So step 4 follows your step. When I say step 4, it follows the steps in your directions. When I say color stop, it follows these numbers here, which are the times that that the machine stops or that you would change threads. I'm going to go ahead and sew out that placement line. That's going to be my first stitch out. And it's up to you whether you want to place, whether you want to tape it down with tape or if you want to do a spray based on it. I'm going to do a spray based. I'm going to use a little bit of KK100 on the back of this in my spray tint over there. And that way I'm not going to use tape, but it's totally up to you. Right. I'm going to swing over to the table for a minute and take my hoop off so I can put this on. I want to show you a couple things. All right. So as long as you are covering both sides, I don't think it matters which direction you go. I'm just going to put a little KK100 on this, and then I'll show you what I normally will do. All right. So I can utilize, this is in the center of my hoop. If my design's in the center of my hoop, in a project like this, I can utilize these 2 marks on my hoop as being my center that goes across. If you don't have those marks, you can usually center on your mat. I can still see my lines through there. So that allows me to just fold this in half. And then I can center it so that I know I can see this. I can see the side to side here that I'm covering. And then I can just unfold it. And I know that I've got enough on this end and enough on this end. And I don't think it's going to matter which way you go on this. So I've got my right sides together folded. I've got the center matching the notches on my hoop or on a line on my mat below. And then I'm just going to spread that out. And so now even if you turned your hoop sideways then and lift it up, you should see that you have plenty of excess on either side. So I can see that I have plenty of excess this way and I had plenty of excess the other way as well. All right, so I'm just gonna, I don't think I'm going to need any tape. I think I'm gonna get a tack down. Yeah, I'm gonna get a tack down line around this. So none of the decorative stitching of the embroidery is gonna start stitching before it actually tacks this down. So it's gonna make sure that it's all smooth and out, and then I'm gonna return this to the machine. And pause the camera. All right, so again, if you want to use tape to hold it down and you're comfortable with that, that's fine. I tend to use the spray base. When you use spray base, be really sparingly with it. You know, spray away from your machine, obviously. Pizza box always works well if you don't have a spray tent. Spray tent's nice because it controls any overflow. And I really like the KK100 because it really doesn't have any aroma, so to speak. It doesn't have that strong smell that some of them do. She's in. I let her in. Okay. Thank you. Sorry about that. All right, so I'm gonna go over a couple of things again for those of you that are here, so that those that just joined us can kind of catch up. But I use a really light gray, and so you can see that the light gray of that, if I use that for applique, once I put my fabric over the top of that and I did my tack down stitch, you're never going to see that gray, but that gray is just enough of a color. It went around twice here. It only went around one time on the other. It's enough of a color that I can get perfect placement with my appliques. So that's why the pale gray is always my kind of go-to. You know, a kind of a yellow pale cream would work too. It's just something you can see on any color of fabric, makes that part easier. And then, so for those of you just joining us, sorry about the snafu. Sorry about the snafu this morning. I'm not sure what exactly happened. I think that there was gremlins here in the store last night because it was all ready to go last night before I left. I mean, ladies, I honestly set up the classroom before I left last night. Everything was ready to go until the whole thing with the phones were ringing. We would answer them. You couldn't hear us. And then the link, nobody had, and people were calling, and then I sent out a new link and I couldn't see the link in Jeannie's account. So I was just like, there was gremlins. I know there were. All right, so for those of you just starting, we are using the 8x12 design. You have fusible backing that goes on your light blue polka dot, your white with blue polka dot fabric. Go ahead and fuse that on. Hoop, a medium cutaway stabilizer. You have in your kits a mesh stabilizer that's still a cutaway. Load the design file, which is the 8x12. So you're not that far behind. Stitch the center placement line. Place the center of the fabric right side up, covering the placement line, and then stitch the tack down. So for those of you that maybe are struggling with, I didn't get anything right. I'm going to be reading off the directions with each step. And for those of you that have them, you can just mute me. But I want to make sure that those that did not have a chance to print everything, you know, got what they needed. All right. So for me, this is my dark green. This is my medium green, and this is my light green. So I'm looking at the next couple of steps here. I'm going to start with dark green. I'm going to go to the light green, and then I'm going to go to the medium green. Okay, so those are my first three colors. So dark green, medium green, light green. And I still have just a plain white bobbin thread in. So we are looking at color stop now. Going forward will be color stop number 3. And that is the darker green. So I have my darker green thread that we're going to be using. And if we look over to the side there, I think I'm at full speed here, but it's about a 4-minute stitch out. All right, I'm just going to focus the camera on the stitch out part over here. And I'm going to be cueing you on what the color stop is and what color that we're going to be using. And what I would like to invite you to do, since we're going to be spending a lot of time just stitching today, ladies. So if you have embroidery questions that you want to ask that you've been dying to get an answer or a different perspective on, while we're stitching and the needle's going up and down, you can either use the chat box or just unmute yourself and ask the question. So we are doing color stop number 3 right now. It is the darker of the 3 greens. So Liz, yes, when you're doing embroidery, that's a really good question because that confuses a lot of people. When you're doing embroidery, when you have an embroidery bobbin thread, the bobbin thread is going to be generally a 60 or a 90 weight, depending on, you know, what you've purchased. Your embroidery thread, your traditional embroidery thread is a 40 weight. So what happens is that creates an environment where the bobbin thread is going to pull your top thread to the bottom, which is what it needs to do. So we're not looking for a balanced stitch in embroidery. We're looking for embroidery thread on the top and no show through of the bobbin thread. So the lighter weight thread is designed for embroidery so that it pulls the top thread to the bottom. The only time I ever use a matching bobbin thread is if I'm doing like a patch or something like that. And then I'll just wind a little bit of my regular embroidery thread for just that part of it. But I never make any attempt unless it's going to be seen in the final product for my bobbin thread to match my top embroidery thread. Now, when sewing, that's different. Sewing thread is designed so that you wind the same sewing thread in your needle and in your bobbin, because you want that balanced stitch to land in the center so that you don't see bobbin thread on the top or top thread on the bobbin on the bottom. So that's why there's the different in the weights. And so 90 weight, I just stick with 60 weight. I mean, I just buy the pre-wounds for the most part, and 60 weight's great for everything that I do. However, when you're doing tiny lettering, so any lettering that is shorter or smaller than a quarter of an inch tall is what I call almost micro lettering. It's really tiny. And I will immediately pick a 60 weight embroidery thread, because it's going to be thin enough that I'm going to get really good definition to my tiny letters, and yet I'm still going to be able to read them. So in that case, then I'll either usually a 60 weight bobbin works fine for that, but just for insurance, I do have a couple of bobbins at home that have 90 weight thread in them. And so if I'm doing a lot of small lettering, I'll do a 60 weight bobbin or 60 weight embroidery thread on the top and a 90 weight embroidery bobbin. Always fun questions when I leave it open to you ask the questions. All right, so we have finished color stop 1 or color stop 3. It should look like this. So I'm gonna go to color stop number 4, which is to stitch the leaves and the stems. So we've done this part. For those of you that didn't print your directions yet, we're doing this part. So we need the lighter of the 3 greens.
Hello. I just bought dime thread. Is that embroidery thread as well?
Yes, that dime is embroidery thread.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah.
Thank
Dime is
you.
embroidery thread.
Oh, thank you.
It's the world of thread is ever changing. I mean, I know some of you really just kind of came into the scene maybe within the last 10 years, and so embroidery was your first love, and that's what brought you into the store to begin with. But I started a long time ago, and garment sewing was was the thing that I started with, and so to me that there's the difference between garment thread and the difference between that and embroidery thread was kind of evident. But if you didn't have that past knowledge, you wouldn't know that. But and dime has some amazing threads too, because they have a collection of thread that are matte color. In other words, they have no shine to them. So if you're doing anything that looks kind of vintagey looking, sometimes I love the matte threads for that have low sheen. Isocord and glide tends to be a mid, what I call a mid sheen. And then when you have something like maybe Floriani or something like that, Fufu thread, that's a high sheen. So you have, and also Madeira rayon's a high sheen. So you have so many choices in what you want, what you want your finished embroidery project to look like. And so after having the discussion on the weight of the threads, then you know why in the beginning I mentioned, but some of them, the ladies may not have heard this, is that when we switch to where we're going to start sewing the little ruffle that goes around here, when you put your gathering threads in, think about it. If your sewing thread is a 40 weight, or 40 or 50 weight, or 40 or 30 weight polyester for sewing, and you have it in the top and the bobbin, then you have, some pretty sturdy thread there. But if you have like your embroidery thread at 40 weight and your bobbin thread at 60 weight, and you're trying to gather something, if you break one of those threads, you're done. It's not going to gather. So I suggest you either use sewing thread, which is what I'm going to be using, or if you are going to be using embroidery thread, because that's what you have, then maybe wind a little bit of embroidery thread at the very least on a bobbin, so that you're not using that thinner bobbin thread or trying to gather, or else be very, very, very careful. Now you're only gathering a single layer, so it's not really that bad. But again, I've done it where I've broken that one thread, and then everything that I was gathering is now not gathering, and I have to start another stitch line for it. So I agree with you, Donna. Matte threads are nice. I think we just we don't see a lot of it that often, because when we think of embroidery, we think of that either low sheen or high sheen to the embroidery. But there's just some stuff out there. Dime has some interesting collections. They really do. I've always enjoyed them. There's one that's like a vintage lettering collection, and they've used the matte threads in that collection extensively, and it's like so much. It's so nice to see them. It's like, ooh, this is kind of cool. And then those of you that may have done like Anita Good Design live events in the past before COVID, I think the last 5 years or last 3 years at least, that they did the embroidery design, their collections actually included matte threads in the events. So it was kind of fun. Yeah, they are. Isn't it? I've been around embroidery probably, I don't know, since the early 90s. And I still never, and plus working in the industry for 17 years, and I'm like, it still never ceases to amaze me what happens when the machine starts to do embroidery on something that's been so nicely digitized as what we get, from our Kimberbell friends. All right. So I am changing. We are moving on to step number 9, page 7, step number 9, color stop number 5, which will be the mid green. So this was my dark green. This is my mid green. And this one's going to sew for like 11 minutes.
Michelle, I just started the last green because I was having some trouble with my helper trying to get in the embroidery machine.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm sorry. What's going on with your machine?
Oh, it's not the machine, it's the cat.
Oh, okay.
The cat that wants to sit on the embroidery part of the machine.
Oh,
I can't understand why that's not right.
I see. Okay. Well, maybe Kitty needs a machine of her own, but she can sit on her machine.
I'm going out, I'm going around looking for an empty box, because once I find an empty box, he'll be fine.
Your camera back to yourself. You got your camera back. The camera on your machine, Donna, or the camera on your laptop? Yes, Irene, you can actually stay connected to the Zoom meeting. I guess if you have an appointment, you can stay connected and just have it on mute. Or you can re-click the same link and just rejoin when you get back. Oh, on your laptop, it's dying. You know, I have an external little webcam that clips on the top of my laptop that I love. I just got it off Amazon, and it's actually been a godsend because my desktop, the webcam in my desktop died. And so I thought, oh, well, I'll get this little portable, you know, it plugs into the USB. And that little thing has come in really handy. Yeah, the little external webcams are nice. You can kind of just take them with you anywhere. As long as you have USB to plug them into.
Michelle, this is Connie, and I'm watching my fabric embroider out, and it's kind of becoming bubbly. Like it's not really, it looks like it's going to have some puckers on it.
Okay, so do you have an extra piece of cutaway stabilizer that you can slide under just where it's embroidering?
I already did that.
Oh, okay.
It's still doing it.
Okay, so let's hold on just 1 second. I'm going to stop my machine for just a minute. So what you can do is grab the sides here a little bit of your excess of your stabilizer and pull it towards the center. Don't pull out because you'll pop it, but pull towards the center. But you'll actually be amazed at when we press, when we're done, at how much you can actually get out of the bubbling.
Well,
so
it was interesting because I thought maybe I needed some batting underneath of it.
No, it doesn't.
And I didn't put any. So
yeah, it doesn't need batting. So just maybe your stabilizer was just a little bit too loose, but you know what? You'll be amazed at how much we can press out.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. When I first started working here, I was looking for, I was used to working in the industry with dealers. I wasn't used to working, with the consumer. So I really was like not always I wasn't always aware of what the consumer projects that the consumers were doing because I was teaching dealers how to use machines and software. So, Jeannie gave me this project to do one of those Janine Babbage window hangings. It was like the Autumn Delights ones, those long banners. You guys have all done them. At least most of you had. And I've never seen anything like that before because I just wasn't in my scope of what was required with my job. So I thought, oh, well, this is interesting. And I love the way it matched up. I love the way you rehooped and it all matched up. What I hated was I had more bubbles than I knew what to do with. I had more puckering because those letters were so dense. And I was so afraid that I wasn't going to be able to get them out because I'd never seen puckering like that before. I'd never had anything that had puckered like that on me. And I did everything according to the directions and then some. And I'm like, what am I going to do with this? And that's when I realized that a nice wool mat and a really hot iron with no steam and a clapper. So you'll hear me talk about clappers or pressing blocks. They look like this a lot, because when you put that embroidery upside down on a pressing mat. You put your iron on top, and then you go over it with your clapper to pull the excess heat out. You get a press like you have never seen before. So I was like, okay. And I'm looking at the banner now because it's hanging up above the fabric in the store here. And I'm like, I don't know what I was so fussy about because it looks fine right now. And I was like freaking out because it had so many puckers in it. But yeah. And if you've ever watched Jeannie press out puckers, it's so cute because she'll like climb right up on the counter and lean on the iron. The other thing that works, and I know that a lot of you probably don't have this. I do have one because I do heat transfer vinyl and stuff a lot. Is I have a regular heat press. It's one of those ones, it wasn't an expensive one, but it's one of those ones that has a handle on it, and you pull it down and you set a timer so it kind of locks into place, and then it pops up when the timer's done. And that works wonders for doing. You can put your mat in there, you can put all of that. Yeah, I do love my clappers. I have a lot of them. I have more than one. But my heat press has been, and I bought the heat press for the heat transfer vinyl, but I was actually using it before in bag making to actually attach stabilizer to fabric in a large swath of fabric. So I could actually stabilize the fabric before I cut my bag pattern out. So I had big pieces of fabric that needed stabilizer and the iron just wasn't cutting it. And so that heat press will do the same thing, is it'll just heat everything up. And since heat presses don't have steam, it's just, hot. And usually they'll heat up to about 500 degrees. Although I've never used that hot on embroidery before, but I can use it on that and press too. And then when it releases, I use my clapper and that does the same thing. I know, isn't it amazing? When I first came to work here, everybody's like, "What the heck's a clapper?" And so I started calling it a pressing block, a wood pressing block. And people would go, "Well, what the heck is a clapper? Do I set the heat press to?" So it depends on what I'm pressing. In this case, if I was doing embroidery, I would probably put the heat press on about 350, and I'd start with about 10 seconds at firm pressure. And then let it open up. Use your clapper to smooth anything else out. If it still looks like it needs more, I always start at the conservative end of the spectrum with the heat press. And I have a little notebook that I actually keep. Yeah. Well, you got more than me, Donna. I have 4. So, but yes, and they're all different sizes so that they fit in different hoops if I'm pressing in the hoop. But on the heat press, I tend to start at the very low end of the spectrum and work up in heat and pressure and timing. And then I have a little notebook next to it. So I'll actually make notes and say, okay, I did my embroidery. It was on cotton fabric, and, I did it for 325 at 10 seconds. And that was like the best, so I don't write down what wasn't good. I write down what worked. And so I can just really refer back to it. It's more about the heat transfer vinyls because there's so many of them, and they go from like the thickness of your glitter heat transfer vinyl to the thinness of just being like the holographic stuff. So they're all going to be a little different. What's nice is most heat transfer vinyls, if you buy like on a roll or in a package or something like that, will give you what you need. They'll say, okay, this is best pressed at 400 degrees for 12 seconds, and then cold peel or hot peel, or meaning taking the transfer sheet off. So it's kind of fun. All righty, that one finally finished. So I went ahead and wrote some of the colors on my directions here. So we just got done doing color stop number 5. Step number 9, we're on step 10, color stop number 6, and that is the light blue. So I'm going to go ahead and change my thread out here to the light blue. I'm using this.
Michelle, this is Liz. How many blues are we going to be using?
A light blue and a dark blue and a blue green. So this is my blue green. For me, it's more like a minty because we don't have a blue green back here. So it's up to you if you call it, if you consider that to be a green or a blue. And I'm looking at where that is, and it's actually the flower petals 6. So I'm trying to see on the, yeah, so I'm going to move the camera for a minute. So these are flower petal 6, and that's what it looks like in the blue green. But if you, like I said, if you like a different lighter blue or a different shade of blue better, you know, you do you, it's fine. It's all good. But that's what I got. The little flowers are sweet. So do you guys want me to go grab a couple of the other projects that are coming up for this? I have the belt bag done, and I have the stitch sampler done. I can run grab them if you guys want to see them. Just let me know. Give me thumbs up. Yeah. Okay.
Oh,
This is gonna still sew. I'm sorry. Okay. This is gonna be sewing for a while, so I'm gonna go grab them, and that way we'll have something to ooh and ah about. Okay, so I can't check April. I can't check until the machine stops stitching. But if you have, so for those of you that have wireless machines, if there's a new update, if your machine is connected to the internet, you will see a little exclamation point there. So the and then that lets you know that there's something new to load. And I will check. I think 4.6 sounds right to me, but we'll double check it. But I have to wait till the machine stops stitching. All right, so here's the little stitch sampler. It's so cute. It has like chenille here. So we're gonna make some chenille, and you're gonna do applique, red work, some piecing in the hoop. I love fringe. Look at the fringe. This is like one of my favorite things to do. I love fringe. I think fringe is so fun. That's where your vanished thread comes in. And then you have, using some decorative stitches. So it's a little sampler you can hang in your sewing room. And then this was fun. I don't want you to panic. This is the belt bag. So what it is it's a traditional, if you've done any of the Kimberbell done any of the Kimberbell zipper bags, they come unstitched. They have lining, they come unstitched. They're like flat like a pancake. So that you can do embroidery. That's what this is. So you're going to do embroidery on one side, and then you're going to flip it over and do the embroidery on the other side. The embroidery on the other side has these little wings on it here where you're going to slip your belt fabric into it while you're doing the embroidery. It's a step. It's each step is done in the hoop as far as the attaching of the strap, right? Then on the stitching, all you're doing is stitching up the bottom and then boxing the corner. So it's really, how do we sign up for Canvas Bag Kit demo? This is not Canvas Bag Kit demo. This is the belt bag for Kimberbell. I'm not sure what you're asking me on the Canvas Bag Kit demo. So yeah, give me a few more keywords and maybe I can figure it out. But if you're talking about this is the project for, let's see, this is January. This is the sampler is March. I think this is May. So, and then the zipper is already in it, so you don't have to do that. And then you're boxing the top, but it's like the perfect little sized waist bag. And then when you open it, it is lined on the inside. So it's cute. I thought it was like the best project. So is this iPad 2? Is this what you were talking about, or is it a different one? Please give me more words. The bag part of the Kimber. Yes, it is. Yeah, this bag is part of the digital dealer club. It's so cute, isn't it? Isn't it amazing? All right, so April wanted to know what the current 4.60. And the way to tell is, for those of you that have wireless machines, you'll see an exclamation point here. But you always have the option that says download the update program. You can click start, but it'll tell you if you click start that you already have the latest update. But it also tells you right here the new update is installed. If you need to do something, that's not going to be there. A different message is going to be there. All right, so we are now moving to, yeah, the bag was really cool. We are moving to, let's see, color stop number 7. So we're using the dark pink. So I'm going to grab my dark pink. So here's my dark pink and my light pink. There's not a whole lot of difference, but I think enough that I'll see it. I just think that's what I used. So I was so impressed with the belt bag. And I thought, you know what? You could actually, for those of you that have done my software classes, you could actually create the same thing in software and use whatever background fill you wanted. But I mean, to the idea of using a pre-made bag like that, like the Kimberbell bag, gives you the perfect opportunity to actually use your software to create something like that on your own. And also, I was looking at, we always have fun when we can take some of those purchase fills in Design Center or IQ Designers, like the one we got from the Baby Lot group, or Brother also has some designs that load into your, that will load into IQ Designer or My Design Center if you have a Luminaire 3 or a Solaris Vision. You could actually create it in Design Center as well, because really it's nothing more than shapes and size, shapes and fills. So it really kind of opened me up to a couple of different ideas on a couple of ways to utilize it. So if you are, as far as how do you sign up for it, it's part of the 2024 Digital Dealer Club. So if you are a member of that club, as this design, you will get the design and you will get the directions in your downloads on the first of the month, or prior to the first of the month, I think is it. We do the first Friday of the month. The fills. So which designs? So you talking the designs and fills? Oh yeah, but yeah, you're right. They won't go on the Meridian. They won't go on the Stellaire either. It's just right now. It's just the Luminaire and the Solaris. But you know, you just never know what comes next. If you got the upgrade for your Meridian, you know that on the embroidery side of that upgrade that we had that came out for the Stellaire and the Altair and the Meridian this year, we got a lot of the features that they gave us in the upgrade 3 for the Luminaire and the Solaris. So, and that ability to add that design into Design Center was in that upgrade 3. But you know, if you have Key Designer Palette 11 software, you can also import all those fills and designs and motifs into the software. That's what I did with them. I use them on all my machines. I'll sew it out on the multi-needle because I'm not creating it there. I'm creating it in software, and those designs load into software as well, the motifs and the motifs and the fills. So, all right. We have finished color stop 7. We are moving on to color stop number 8, which is step 12, the last step on page 7. So I'm switching from dark pink to light pink. There are some pretty ones. So I know a lot of you are familiar with the 2 Baby Lock, or maybe there's 3 or 4 Baby Lock collections at this point. I don't know. I have only seen just the 2 that we had in the store. But there is the brother educator. Her name is Cindy Hogan, and she has Cynthia's Embroidery, spelled with a Y, Cynthias, Cynthia's Embroidery. And she also has fills and motifs that you can use. Yeah, it doesn't, I don't think it works. They don't work in Brilliance. They just work in the branded software. But I always will tell people the best software is the software that you know how to use and you get support for. So All right, we're just moving right along. So go ahead and flip the page over if you printed, or scroll to the next page if you just have it on your laptop or your iPad. And we're looking at light green. We're going back to light green again. So step number 13, color stop number 9, light green. We just have 2 little bitty things to stitch here. And then we'll be moving on to the next color, which is the blue green. So for me, it's going to be, it kind of looks minty, but it's the closest blue green I have. Okay, color stop number 10, step number 14 on page 8. The blue green, or mint green in my case. And that's going to stitch for about 5 minutes. I think we're getting there. We're on the home stretch anyway. It's a lot of stitching, huh? Sorry about the bumpies here. You know, you could do the border pretty much any size you wanted. So if you have a 14-inch round, what are we using here? A 10-inch round? I didn't even look at the measurements. A 10-inch round? I'm not sure a half an inch is going to be enough. That this is oh, it's a 12. Yeah, a half an inch should do it. I would say go ahead. Yeah, 4. I would say 4 would be good. You could, well, you can always do 5 or 6, but I think that's kind of overkill. So she just has to, so if you look at it this way, if you divide that in half. So right now we have a 12-inch round pillow. If it was a 12-inch rectangular pillow and we went to a 14-inch, then we have an extra inch at either side at least. So by adding an extra inch to the width, yeah, maybe, yeah, it should work. It'd be fine. Because as you get around to the other side, you still get an inch on each side. So I would say, yeah, 4. I would go 4.5 maybe, or 4 1/4 to be safe, because you can always take a little bit bigger seam allowance. But once you get that stitched on and you know, then in the back, you actually want it to be more snug than roomy. If it's snug, you get a nice fit to it. If it's too roomy, then you don't really get that nice round shape. All right, so we have finished that. What are we doing next? Let's look. We're gonna do the dark blue. It's all right. We're glad you decided to jump in and play. Yes, wrong time zone. I know that's got to be tough. All right, so we are jumping into color stop 11, which is the dark blue. And it says to note on the 8x12 side, the centers are also stitched on the flower petals 3. So I don't think we even looked at the 5x7, so I'm not sure that that's relevant, but we're using the dark blue. Okay, no worries. We'll probably take a little break after we get done stitching so that everybody can get caught up. And I'm pretty sure everybody needs to stretch after this anyway. So we'll take a little 10-minute break after we get done stitching before we go into sewing. All righty. What's up next? So, and I'm just giving you a heads up. It's not yet, but it's going to be the next step. So right now we're doing color stop number 12, step number 16. We're going to do the peach flowers, but right after this, have your water soluble thread, bobbin thread handy. Not now, but I'm just warning you that it's coming up in the next step. So for right now, because we're not changing colors of thread, it's still peach. But for this step, which is color stop 12, step 16, we're just changing to peach thread. I don't have anything that's peachy, so my peach is kind of a light orange. But on the sample, I think my peach was so light that I didn't even really see my fringe. So when I did the fringe when I did peach on the sampler, I did that one at home during the break. I used more of a peachy color. And I didn't bring it. So I think this one will work though. The other colors are kind of bright, so probably this will be better. So, Donna, if you're having a thread breaking issue, I'm going to ask you when's the last time you changed your needle? Because a lot of times we don't really hear what's going on. I mean, sometimes you can hear that the needle sounds like it's popping when it goes to stitch. That's letting you know that your needle is blunt. But if you're having shredding and you weren't having shredding before, I would say try changing the needle and see if that helps. Because it'll at least, at the very least, it'll save you some time here if that's, if that's the issue. Usually that's what it is. It's either a needle that has some buildup on it, some spray adhesive or something buildup on it that's, making the thread kind of stick as it goes through the needle, or it's a needle that's just blunt. You think it's just the thread? Oh, okay. The others have been fine. Yeah, that can always happen too. Amazingly enough, thread does have a shelf life. And I don't know if you ask me what the shelf life is, I have no idea. But all I know is when it happens to me, if I have a spool of thread that's giving me grief, the easiest thing for me to eliminate right off the get-go is it the thread. So if I take that spool of thread off and I put a new spool of thread on and the problem is solved, then the problem is the thread. Why is not really important. The thing is it's the thread. If everything else is going good. Now, if I change the thread and it's still having that problem, then it's going to be, do I need to clean out my bobbin area? Does my machine, dusty in there? Does it need service, linty, or do I simply need to change the needle? I know that this machine I'm sewing on right now is linty because I opened it up yesterday to show somebody how to use that little lever to open it up. And I'm like, oi, we haven't cleaned this one in a while. So.
Hi, this is Linda. I don't have any water soluble thread. What happens if I don't use it?
Okay, what you can do is if you don't have water soluble thread, you can do it one of two ways. You can either not worry about it and you won't have fringe because the water soluble thread causes the fringe. Or you can use a regular bobbin thread, and you can try just trimming the bobbin thread when we're done, from the back. The problem is if you catch the other thread, that's the actual, embroidery thread from the front, it actually cuts that loop off. So it's entirely up to you.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh. All right, ladies, go ahead and grab your water-soluble thread. I'm just going to take this bobbin and I'm going to put it somewhere where I know. I'm just going to stick it on my bobbin winder for now so I know which one it is. And I'm going to grab my water-soluble thread. Water-soluble thread is just great for doing fringe and stuff like that. It just kind of makes it fun. And always make sure that you put it in a little baggie and label it, because it really looks pretty close to it's a little thinner than your regular embroidery thread, but if you're not really looking at it, it can fool you. And then you could wash whatever you did embroidery on and say, where did the embroidery go? I know I did embroidery on here. And because when you washed it and pulled it out of the washer, all your thread was gone. But okay, so just double checking right now that everybody that does have water-soluble thread has it in their bobbin for the next couple of steps. So here's what we're doing. We're doing these flowers right here. These two over here. And we're doing the fringy part of it. So for these next two stops, we're going to have water-soluble thread in our bobbin, or a bobbin color that you can see. White, you should be able to see. It is possible to trim from the back without using water-soluble thread, but you do have to have, I would say, have a nice magnifying glass or something handy so that you can make sure that you're just cutting the bobbin thread and not cutting the colored thread. All right, here we go. The orange one is first, or the peachy one is first. I think I like this little orange color with this. So it's the girl who has a bright yellow sweater on. I like bright colors. Oh, dear God, you scared the bejesus out of me. I was like totally concentrating. I'm like, wait, where's the dog? Hello, we're doing our little Kimberbell class. Hello, everybody. Dana just joined the party. All right, so we are now on, still leave that water-soluble in there. We're on color stop number 18, and that's our purple. So we're going to start with that, but leave the water-soluble in. So the rest of you just stay exactly where you're at right now. I just want to show Linda something since she doesn't have water-soluble thread. All right, so if I zoom in here, let's see if I can do this for Miss Linda. All right, can you see where you can see my white bobbin thread? For you, since you don't have it, you want to go in there, and after we're done with scissors that have little teeny tiny tip on them, and get in there and snip the white. And don't worry if you can't do all of them. What you want to do is make sure that you get close enough that you can see to the best of your ability, and just snip the bobbin thread.
Okay.
Okay.
This is the white.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. We got to make it work, right, ladies? With what we got.
It's cute.
Hi, Michelle. I got a little bit behind because I had to do a wind my bobbin. So what's the color of the flower that you just did?
The flower that I just did is the peach, but I didn't have peach, so I have kind of an orangey color.
Okay.
And then the next stop we're going to it's going to be purple. So those are the two fringy flowers. So my next color change is color stop 14, step number 18. We still have the water-soluble bobbin thread in there. And then we're going to change back before color stop 15. Ah! Come on. Seems to be working, but still on step 11. You know, Donna, don't worry about it. You'll get caught up. We're gonna take a little break when we get done stitching, and we'll have to take a little break because we have to, you know, soak the water soluble thread off. So before we move on, so it's on and it's recorded. So if it doesn't work, we're good. All is well. Okay. And you'll notice if you're watching it stitch, you'll notice that some of these stitches are quite large. They're long stitches, and that's so that they make a loop when that water soluble thread is dissolved. Yeah, using a different color bobbin thread is helpful as well. All right, this is your cue. Take out your water soluble bobbin thread. The next step is going to sew the center of the flowers, which are going to be the anchor stitches to hold the fringe when you dissolve the other thread. So you want to go ahead and remove your water soluble. If you are done, if you are on color stop 15 and you have done both the peach and the purple flower, remove your water soluble bobbin and put your regular bobbin thread back in. I think it's always good to actually have a couple of pre-wound bobbins in colors for just such a situation. If you don't have water soluble and you need to have a bobbin thread you can see to trim, I think it's, you know, a really good idea. And in this case, it wouldn't really matter. You might think, well, what if I see, like, if I get a bright red, you know, bobbin, pre-wound bobbin, and what if I see it from the front? Well, when you're using it as a replacement for water soluble thread, it doesn't matter because you're going to be cutting it out. So, all right. So we are on color stop number 15. We are on step number 19 on page number 8, and we have changed our bobbin thread back to the regular, and we are stitching purple, and that's going to be the anchor. So the center of the flower, that's going to be our anchor stitches for it. Moving on to color stop 16, we're going back to our peach for the center of this other flower. Oop. Camera shakes. Stop, stop. All right, so now we're gonna sew the last color stop 17, which is light blue. Now, if you are finished before we are, please do not take your project out of the hoop just yet, because I'm going to show you a little trick on something. If you did, don't worry about it. You can still do it, but it's just easier if it's still in the hoop. These flowers are so pretty. Yay. Hi, Irene. We're glad you're back.
What a beautiful flower. It's my favorite.
Aren't they?
Gorgeous.
All of them are pretty. Whoever they have that does their digitizing for them does a wonderful job. I'm sure it's probably more than one person with the prolific, how prolific everything comes up. Well, the creativity itself, the concept and the creativity is going to be, through the minds of Kimberbell. But I'm pretty sure that they, somebody else does the digitizing for them. And so, they have the idea, and then that person brings that idea to life, which is, the creative process requires both of them, not just one of them. But whoever they have that does it always seems to do a great job of, doing, I look for things, some designs are like so dense that they're not fun when they're done because it's just thread piling on top of thread. But it never seems to be the case with these. Even like this little, right now I'm sewing this little teeny tiny flower center. Even that little teeny tiny flower center has just enough stitches to show up as a center, but not be, not leave a wad of thread. Yeah, I agree. It is definitely amazingly creative and gorgeous. Yeah, no doubt. Okay, I'm actually turning my iron on because we're going to press this. And you know what? I forgot. You have to take it out of the hoop to press it. So I'm still going to show you the trick. I'm just going to show you after we get it pressed. All right. So we are done with that. We are actually going to go to sewing mode, but I'm going to press this, and then I'm going to I'll start by clipping some of my my bobbin stitches, just so those of you that don't have vanished thread can kind of follow along, and then I'll go ahead and have the rest of them. I'll just use some water. At home, what I use is a tiny makeup sponge, those little kind of rubbery latex makeup sponges. I use a tiny sponge and I just sponge it. And I, just get those little tiny sponges in like a bag of 100 or something. And so I just throw it away when I'm done with the project. But, a Q-tip works pretty well. Anything that you have. I'm going to move the camera in just a minute, ladies.
Just by the way, Christine Webb might be joining, so she might be.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen her yet, but okay. Thank you. I'll watch for her. Oops, I've got the camera caught in the back of the chair. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to do that to you. Come on, come back. Okay, there we go. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and stand up because that's the easiest way to press down on when you're trying to press. So I got a few puckers. I mean, I'm definitely not flat here. But I'm pretty sure I can get rid of 99.9% of them, and the other ones will probably be gone when I stick a pillow in. All right, so I'm not gonna use steam. Do not steam. Steam, especially not now, because you have water-soluble thread here. So no steam, turn steam off. I'm gonna go ahead and get my another thing that I will do is, let's talk about these Teflon pressing sheets. So a lot of times I'll say use a Teflon sheet, and sometimes I'll say use parchment paper, and there's a difference. So on a Teflon sheet conducts heat, meaning, that was one of the wild things about Teflon pans when they first came out, is they actually conduct heat, so they heat up faster. With a Teflon pressing sheet, you get more heat. With a parchment paper deflects heat. That's why the bottoms of your cookies don't get burnt when you bake it on parchment paper. So in this case, we want to increase the heat because we want to press and get a good press to it. So I'm going to use my Teflon pressing sheet, and I'm just going to press in areas, and I'm pressing and holding, just giving it some heat. I don't want to cook it, just give it some heat, and then a little spot at a time, because I want to be able to do this with my clapper when I'm done. I want to be able to really get that clapper in there. And you're only ever going to press from the back. Pressing from the front is a recipe for disaster on embroidery. So press from the back. All right. All right. Okay, so for those of you that are trimming, let's flip this over. And I'm happy with my press. If you're not happy with your press, keep pressing. See how this is kind of I don't know if you can see that in the video, but it's kind of wavy here. I have no puckers in here. It's just kind of wavy here. Don't worry about that, because that's going to be gone by the time you flip it, put a ruffle on it, and then stuff a pillow in it. I'm only concerned about what's going on in here. So if you're happy with what's going on in here, don't worry about these little, this little movement here. All right, so turning it over. If you're going to trim the bobbin threads, please don't use a seam ripper. I know that a lot of people do that, but what happens is if you push even remotely too hard, look at this. Let me show you. Can you see how I have all of these in here? If I push too hard with that seam ripper and I go across into here instead of on my bobbin thread, I'm gonna just destroy that fringe. So this is a labor of patience if you're gonna do it with scissors. And what I like, there's even smaller nippers that just have like a little, you can use something like this, because that's tiny, or these that you thought, what will I ever use those for? These are like some kits, some of them that came in the Fomori kits. You can use those. And if you know anybody that in the medical field, a lot of times they have those little slightly curved, sharp scissors for bandage removal and stuff. That'll work. But please don't stick a seam ripper in there. You will not be happy if you cut all of your threads. So I can really only see a few of them. So I'm just going to go in there and grab the ones I can see.
I use Kai scissors,
And
little
that's
bitty
fine.
Kai scissors.
Yeah, as long as you can see and you can just go just gingerly a little tiny bit at a time. The main thing is just to have something that's small and probably not a seam ripper, which, you know, would be tragic if you, after getting this far in this project, right? And so as I get over here, it's really hard for me to see where the bobbin thread is. So this is where I'm going to stop with the trimming myself, and I'm going to go more to the wash away. But you can try to keep going. And then so just that little trimming that I did, if I come to the front and I just kind of give it a, so what I want to do is I want to have loops. And I'll have those loops as long as I don't cut the, see how they're looping? Like you can't see it because I've had it so expanded. All right, see how I've got loops here and not just strings. That's what you're looking for. So you just want to cut, you just want to cut enough of the bobbin thread that you're still gonna end up with loops and not strands of thread. All right, so for the rest of you, we are going to use a little water to get rid of that, and then we are going to take like a 10-minute break. And then we'll go into the remaining part of our project. If you have to leave, if the project runs over, you have to leave, you have something to do, don't worry, it's recorded. It's actually already recorded. It's been up. So it's in the Kimberbell group. And if you can't find it, I'll include it. But yeah, let's get some water soluble and get that done. Or some water I'm just gonna get a wet paper towel. You can use a spray bottle too if you have that. And so I'm just going to dab it on there. It's going to end up getting pretty wet, but it'll have time to dry before. And then as I'm doing that, so on your water soluble pens, you may not have known this. Some of them have like this rubber tip on the back. So from the front, I'm going to use that rubber tip to begin to move my thread as the bobbin thread loosens up. And it's a process. Sometimes I might let it dry a little bit and then go back at it, but I can see where they're starting to come up. And sometimes you have to just get part of the loops out so that you can actually see what's left over. Okay, so I'm going to zoom back into this. So you can see that right in here, that now it's starting to come undone. But this side, not so much. I must not have got enough water there. So give it a little bit more. You know what else works well for this is if you have one of those seam rippers that have like the rubber thing on the top. We sell them here in the store. The rubber on the back of that works really well. Essentially, you're doing the same job as you're trying to move thread around, but this one's still attached instead of, seam ripper. You can also give some water from the front. And again, we'll let this dry and I'll probably press it again before we start. I can tell I need to get some more water because my towel here is, but maybe I can see some of the thread. All right. Look at how cute that is. I love fringe. I think it's really fun. All right, so that little guy's ready. A couple more over here. All right, one down, one to go. And I have 12:39. So let's do 10 minutes. And then that way everybody will have a chance to use the restroom and stretch a little bit. And then we'll get started with the rest of it. And in the meantime, I'm probably gonna, oh, look at that one. That one actually worked pretty well. I didn't think that my towel was wet enough, but seems to be coming up. All right. All right. No steam, just getting a little bit of the water out of there. All right, I'm just gonna let this dry a little bit. Okay, so at 10 minutes to 1, we will reconvene, and you can turn your your embroidery machines to sewing mode. You can add your little sewing shank and wind a bobbin in regular white thread if you want, or not. Up to you. Okay. All right, I'm going to step away for just a minute and I'll be right back. So Sharon, I send the video out after class, or there should be one. I may have already posted it in the, so I think there should be a Digital Dealer 2024 Facebook page. I'm just not sure I've sent it out yet, but you'll get it as soon as I get done. I can send that part out. But this, the video that we're recording now it won't be probably till the end of the day that I'll post it to YouTube and the Facebook page.
Now, which foot should we have on the sewing machine?
So right now, just your J foot.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I am in the process of switching over my machine. I am taking off my embroidery foot. I'm putting on my shank and my J foot. I'll switch the camera in just a moment. All right, so we're going to start over at the table. I'm just going to give this one more press just to make sure that it's dry from the back. I think it's going to need a little bit of time to dry. Actually, I got it pretty wet. And you can leave your iron on for right now. All right, so if you've already got this ready to go, the last step is to actually trim around this gray line. So which line do we know that we're trimming around? Well, we're trimming around the outside line. So if you're looking at it from the back, it's the outside line. The inside line is like our stitching line for, attaching. So you can go ahead and trim around that circle right at that line. That would be step number 24, remove the project from the hoop, trim the fabric on the trimming line, stitched in this direction. Step 6, set the pillow center aside for now. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Just going to use some shears for this. And then what I wanted, the little trick that, and I'm sure it's not a trick because I'm pretty sure most of you already know it, but in this project, they want you to distribute evenly your gathered fabric. But it seems to me they want you to eyeball it as to how much of the fabric gets distributed where. Because I can't see anywhere in here where they had you actually make any marks that would help you distribute that fabric evenly. So we are going to make some marks. And this is why we didn't do them while it was still on the machine, which is usually what I do if I don't have to press and I don't have to get it wet for the fringe, is I mark the quarter markings while the project is still in the hoop, because I can use the little notches on the hoop to do it. But we can also do it this way. So we want to fold this in half and just do little markings. And you can do it from the back side or I'm going to do it from the back side. And here's why. Because I believe, it doesn't matter. You're going to be sewing from the ruffle side. So just make a little tiny mark with something that's water erasable, or make it within your 1/4 inch seam allowance. Because that's what you're going to have is 1/4 inch. And then these little marks are going to help you line up and distribute evenly without making yourself crazy. Because that way you'll have all of your quarter markings there as a visual aid. All right, so we're going to set this aside for now. And then we're going to grab our little piece of ruffle fabric. And that's this. And again, I'm going to give it a little bit of best press. I'm going to get rid of my selvage edges because, nobody wants to sew with that. So and so this is cut the width of the fabric, and it said that you need I think 38.5 inches or something like that. I don't think 1/4 inch or 2 inches or 3 inches of extra gathers is going to hurt. So, plus I'm actually doing a seam in the center. So I'm not going to cut any excess off. I'm just going to leave it. If you want to, go ahead by all means. But just given the pillow that I just did for the sample, I just know that extra 2 inches isn't going to make a doggone bit of difference. So I'm just going to leave it. If anything, you'll have a little bit more floof. Just going to give it a little best press. And I always press out any wrinkles first. I'm not the ironing maven, but I really just prefer to get some of these folds and stuff out before I start working. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to fold this right sides together.
Michelle,
Yes.
going back to cutting this design out, we're cutting on that line that we stitched.
Yes, the outside line on the front.
Okay, thank you.
Because if you turn it over, the other line, the inside line, that's actually your 1/4 inch. That's actually a 1/4 inch seam. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no worries. All right, so put your little ruffle right sides together. We're going to sew this at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then when we get done, we're going to come back and press that open. Once we've done that, we're going to start adding our gathering. And that's once we get the basting stitches in for our gathering, we're going to mark 1/4 marks on this as well. So instead of having to eyeball the whole thing, we're going to put the 1/4 marks together, knowing that we have 1/4 of the circle and 1/4 of the excess of the ruffle, so that it's actually even all the way around without having to eyeball it. So I'm going to go ahead and take this over to the sewing machine now, and I'm going to sew this with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm going to move the camera. Oh yeah, I just don't want to mess up. All right. So I've got my my J-foot on there. I'm going to get rid of this. Touch sewing. And so I'm going to show you how to get a perfect 1/4 inch seam allowance using your J-foot. First of all, I'm actually going to do needle down, needle up. Well, I don't need to with this. I'm not doing the ruffle. Oops, I'm getting ahead of myself. So I don't need to do that with this. All right. So with your J-foot, you have a stitch that's programmed in your machine for quilting with your J-foot for a perfect 1/4 inch seam. And I'm feeling your rough spot. Looks like a little piece of my J-foot got broke. And that is if you are in your utility stitches, and it depends on what model and how many stitches you have. But if it's a Brother Baby Lock model throughout the line, you have a stitch that looks like this. It says P for piecing. When you touch that stitch, it moves your needle position over to 5.50, which means that it's moved your needle position over to the right so that the edge of your J-foot is an exact 1/4 inch seam allowance. So it really makes it much, much easier for you to create that perfect 1/4 inch seam. It also takes your stitch length down to 2.0. So, but it is adjustable because when we come back, we're going to want to make it as long as we can for our 1/4 inch gathering. But for now, you can just leave it at the default. Again, and Brother Baby Lock, any machine up and down the line will have like the letter P. Again, it just depends on how many stitches you have and what model that as to where it's going to appear, but it will be in the utility stitches. All right. And it's also going to start with a needle up, needle down. I mean, it's going to start with a fixed stitch rather than back stitching. So you don't have a lot of thread wadded up in that steam there, which is a good thing when we're going to go to gather. So plug in my foot control here. And I'm gonna just, I mean, you want to not start, don't sew on air because machines don't like that, but start at the very edge and you'll see that it's gonna do a little bit of a stitch in place. Actually, it didn't. Why did it not do it? Mine didn't. So maybe I have to tell it I want it to do a stitch in place because I don't have that feature on. There we go. And then when I get to the end, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to stitch in place. Okay, if you're unmuted, if you could please mute yourself. There we go. I gotcha. Never mind. I got it covered. All right, so now I'm going to take this back to my machine. Or to the iron. I'm going to press it flat first to seat those stitches, and then I'm going to press it open with my clapper to make it really flat. And I'll be right back here. All right. So when we start our stitching, first of all, we want to turn our project our ruffle right side out. So we're working from the right side. We're going to start from that seam that we just created. All right. We are going to back stitch in that seam a little bit to anchor our gathering stitch. What we do want to do is make sure that we really change this here, the length of the stitch all the way up to what we can change it, which is like 5.0. Otherwise, you're not going to gather. You're going to leave this at 5.50 because we're still using that 1/4 inch. All right, so I'm going to begin right at that seam. And I did a little back stitching, and now I'm going to do this 1/4. I'm going to follow my edge at a 1/4 inch, and I've got this 5.0 stitch length. So make sure you're at 5.0. Doesn't matter which side because fabric doesn't have a right or a wrong direction. And do not backstitch when you get to the end. When you get to the end, we want to pull those tails out. So if you have the automatic cutter on, turn it off. We need those tails to gather. All right, so don't run over. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit here. Don't run over where you backstitched. You want to stop right at it or right before it. So I'm going to go really slow. And if you have to like go a 1/2 stitch or something, just make sure that 1/2 stitch doesn't land on top of it. All right, so make sure that you don't, and then just pull some thread out. All right, so now I'm going to move back over to the table. And you can use like pins, you can use clips, whatever you have. We're going to make our 1/4 markings on here so we know how to place it and where to clip it at. And we're going to get this part stitched up. Come on, camera. come back. Come on. There we go. All right. I can hear that somebody's not muted. If you would be so kind as to mute yourself, just so that we don't have all the background distortion. All right. So what their directions were: pull the bobbin threads together to the border fabric, continue to gather the border fabric evenly until the circumference of the opening is the same as the pillow. Well, okay, except for you have nothing marked, so you're kind of gonna eyeball it. So here's what we're gonna do. We are gonna do quarter markings. So we did quarter markings on our circle. We're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna do quarter markings on our ruffle. So my quarter marking here is fine. It's the seam. So I'm just gonna do a quarter marking here. Does it have to be perfect? No, ma'am, it does not have to be perfect, but at least it'll give you an idea that you are distributing evenly. And again, this is water soluble, or the heat soluble pen. So it's, I can make it so I can see it.
Sorry, Michelle, if I could have a question to go back.
Of course.
When you were sewing that basting, is it a basting stitch or is it still the same?
If your machine has a basting stitch, you can use a basting stitch. I just increased the stitch length to 5.50. The basting stitch on the Brother machine is only 5.50. So rather than, if I go on the basting stitch, then I'm back to a center needle position, and I was already at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I just wanted to use that and just increase the stitch length. So if you do if you have a basting stitch that's longer than that and you want to use it, by all means, I don't care. Use whatever you normally would use. But with the Brother machine, and really it'll be plenty. I'm going to be pulling from the inside, which was the bobbin area, and look, it gathers just fine at 5. So mine's just at 5.0. All right, so now we have our strip, we have our quarter markings on it, and then I'm going to go grab some clips. You can use clips, you can use pins, you can use whatever works for you. So now my job is to pull the bobbin threads to gather the fabric and continue to gather the fabric until the border fabric evenly is the circumference of the opening. It's the same as the pillow. So I'm going to get this here. And I always have to start pulling all the way over to this other side first. So, and again, just go slowly so that you don't break that thread, and just move your gathering down the line here. It doesn't take as long as you might think, but we're just going to move it down. If I was doing this, I would not have one line of stitching. I would probably have a line of stitching for a half, so that I'm not trying to do the whole length of the fabric with just one thread. But it actually works just fine with just one thread. Oh yeah, yay. So I'm just moving this down. Most important thing is I just don't want to break that thread that I'm pulling. So I'm pulling from the bobbin thread. You can see I'm working from the bottom of the fabric because I stitched from the top. So that means I'm gathering with my bobbin thread. And just going around. I'm going to work this all the way over to the end. All right, so I'm at the end here. Okay, where my seam is, right? So I know that I'm going to want my seam at the bottom of my pillow. So let's see if I can show you here. So here's my seam here, and that's the bottom of the design. So I know that I have a mark here and I have a mark here. So my first mark, which is this one here, I'm going to gather until it fits in that area there. So I'm going to start over, or I'm going to start over here. Again, I'm still working from the back. Move that in there. So instead of trying to wiggle this so that it fits the entire pillow at one time, I'm just going to make it work for right where I'm at in one quadrant. All right. So here's my mark. So I know that it's got to go from there to here. All right. And I'm not clipping over the thread because I may still have to pull some thread through here. And I do. So I'm going to work some more of these gathers down to the other end here. So you're essentially making a big circle. What we want to do to, have it be kind of symmetrical is we want the circle, the big circle that we're, matching to, which is our ruffle here. We want that to match the bottom here of the bottom quadrant. And see, now I've got too many in there because if I do this, here's my mark and here's where I'm going. So then I can just begin to work some of these out evenly and push them into the next quadrant. There's my mark. There's a few more and just move them. So this makes it easier for me to actually distribute it evenly because I'm distributing 1/4 of it at a time. And then while I'm doing this, when I get this evenly distributed, can't even talk today. It's been a problem all week. And I honestly did not party too hard on New Year's. I did not. I promise I did not. Okay, so I think I'm getting there almost, a few more. Then it actually allows me to be more consistent. And I don't have to worry about the whole pillow at one time. I can just worry about 1/4 at a time. Oh, there it is. It's going to go right here. And then I'm just going to put a clip right here just to mark that, and then I'll space this out. All right, so if you're using clips, if you're new to the clip world, there is a right side and a wrong side of the clip. If you're not new, you probably already know this. And you want the flat side of the clip down to the bed of the machine because that allows you to push down on it and flip it out of the way when you're stitching. So we want to make sure that the curved end, or in this case with these clips, the colored end, is up on the top. See how nicely that just fits in there? And you've got these equal little, gathers. And you only had to worry about part of it at one time, right? Which is easier than all of it. All right. Then I'm going to go back to the beginning and add more gathers. And work on the next quadrant. All right. There's my mark. There's my mark on the pillow. And I'm just going to space these kind of out kind of evenly. Yeah, you could use a zigzag over a narrow cord. It would be fine. It never breaks. Well, you're right. It never breaks. But the cord will add bulk in a 1/4-inch seam is the only thing that I would consider. But other than that, it sounds like a perfect idea. But I used to pull the gathering stitch out when I was done anyway. Once the seam had been finished to get that extra thread out of the seam allowance. So again, it's up to you. If you want to zigzag over a cord, that works as well. Sometimes it's really hard to, here's the only issue with that. If you zigzag over a cord, which is a fabulous idea, I'm not saying it isn't. It's a wonderful idea. I've used that idea myself. I only have a 1/4-inch seam allowance. So that means that if I'm going to leave that cord in there and be able to stitch a straight stitch at a 1/4 of an inch, then that cord needs to be zigzagged on within that 1/4-inch seam allowance, which means at about 1/8 of an inch. So on some cotton fabrics, that might not be enough fabric to hold it without the edge of the fabric shredding. That would be my only concern. But other than that, it sounds like a fabulous idea. A lot less work. But if you have a bigger seam allowance, and if you don't, it's like this. I mean, I would probably have done 2 lines of stitching. You know, I would have gone like half of it and gathered half at a time, because it would definitely be easier than trying to go all the way around. All right, so I've got one more mark I'm trying to match here. Where's my mark? It's set it right there. Nope, where is it? I've got it probably tucked in one of those little bunches of ruffles here. Yep, there it is right there. So that's going to be my mark for there, right there. So what I like about the clips here is it definitely holds things in place until you get there to stitch it. Pins would as well. I just tend to reach for clips anymore, and I never did. I was like the hardest thing for me to adjust to. I don't know why. Now I'm like, ooh, clips in pretty colors. Everybody needs glitter clips, right? Yes, of course we do. All right, last quadrant. All right, now when I get to the end here, and I know it's where I want to stop, make sure it's where you know that it's where you want to stop. Because once you do the next thing, you're not going to be able to gather anymore. Okay. So if you're gathering with your bobbin thread, when you are done, reach underneath and give your top thread a pull, because that's going to lock that. If I can catch it here, it's going to lock that in, and you will not be able to pull it out. So it's just going to hold it. It'll kind of make a little knot there. Or you can tie a knot, or you can even, in this case, probably not even worry about it. Just make sure that you, because that's probably where I'll start stitching. So, but normally if you grab the top thread, when you're gathering like this, if you grab your top thread, which should be this one right here, it actually will create, because it pulls that thread you've been pulling, it pulls it to the other side. It pulls it down. So it kind of makes a little knot there. All right, when you've got that all gathered and clipped, feel free to take it over to your machine. Sew it with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Make sure that if you are still on a basting stitch, that you take it off of basting stitch, because you want to really stitch it at this point. All right. And then you can probably turn your iron on to have it start heating. All right. Go ahead and see how much nicer it was to do that. You didn't even have to you didn't have to guess if you had enough gathering in there. All right. I'm not going to cut the gathering threads off, but I am going to cut part of it off so it's not hanging everywhere. All right, going over to the machine, going to stitch this with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I can use my J foot to do it, and I'm going to also use my stiletto to make sure that I don't that I keep those gathers flat. Come on, come back, camera, come back. All right. All right, so make sure that you change your stitch length back to a shorter stitch length. You don't have to do 2.0 if you don't want to, but definitely not 5.0. And I'm just going to start stitching. It doesn't matter where I start stitching because the clips are going to let me know when I get to the end. And I do have to get a couple of them out so I can get my foot in there comfortably. And then I am also going to backstitch at the end and the beginning. Oh, I can't use the start stop button. What's the matter with me? And my thread came out. Whoa, come on. All right, let's try it this way. Let's see if I can push the right button this time, ladies. That'd be good, right? All right, back stitching. And I'm just going to use my stiletto to hold my ruffles down, my ruffle down. See how easy that clip comes out if you got it going in the right direction? All right. Up to you whether you want to pull the basting stitch out or not. I always look and see if it's going to show. If it's going to show, I'll probably go in there and pull some of it out. And then go ahead and press this flat and then start to turn it to the right side. Yeah, you know, that comes from bag making. Because if you do enough gussets, you know that if you don't mark your quarters, you'll end up with the gusset higher on one side of the bag on the front than on the back. So it's like it's impossible almost to get that straight without doing quarter marking. So it just kind of applies to anything where you have to make something bigger fit into something around something smaller. Let's see, I think I got most of it here. When I say most of it, I really don't care if I get every single thread. What I do want to do is get the threads that I can see are going to be on the inside of my stitching line, meaning they're going to show on the outside. Other than that, when I'm done and I stuff the pillow in here, I don't care what it looks like on the inside. It's not couture. It is a pillow. So I had a teacher that, you know, I don't know if you call her teacher or more of an influencer, I guess, that I did a lot of. She had an atelier in Baltimore that she did a lot of custom, really beautiful gowns, you know, like she had done the inauguration gowns for the first ladies of, you know, Maryland for years, and had this amazing couture business. I mean, this is stuff like, you know, we would probably never have a use for in our lifetimes, but I thought the whole process was really interesting. So I did a 2-week retreat with her many moons ago. And that was her first tip. So because one of the conversations we had was that I do a lot of costuming because the kid's in drama, and she's like, is it a costume or is it couture? And I'm like, well, it's a costume. It's a chicken. She's like, then don't worry about it. If it's couture, you go back and you worry about it. If it's a costume, you're like, yeah, it's a costume. So that's how I've always thought about projects from then on. All right, I'm going to go ahead and press this. I'm guiding you over. Hopefully you guys won't get traumatized without turning the camera off. And I'm going to go ahead and press just along the seam because I don't want to really flatten my ruffles. Kind of don't sweat the small stuff. Yes, exactly. Because I think that as sewers or embroiderers, we tend to make projects hard on ourselves because we want it to be perfect. When in all honesty, nobody's going to notice. You will maybe. And if it bothers you that much, by all means, you know, make it perfect. But for the most part, is it something that's heirloom that you're going to gift to somebody that's going to be in the family forever and ever? Or is it a trick or treat bag? You know? So, all right. So now that you've got it, you can kind of begin to press out. I'm trying to balance around the camera, but just a little bit right around the seam. Again, we don't want to do too much with that outside edge just yet. And so by doing this, I'm also getting rid of whatever marks would have been there from my quarter markings. All right, I'm gonna flip this over to the other side and give it a flatten right here. And then I'm gonna set this aside and we're gonna do a zipper. Don't panic, take a breath. And I knew that this class was gonna be longer just for the sewing. So again, please don't feel bad if you have to be somewhere and you have to leave. Just leave and you'll get it on the replay. Some of this is the fabric itself. All right. One of my favorite things I did in that class that I'll never do again is a beaded center back zipper on a black dress. It was beautiful. So literally you put the zipper in by hand, and with every single stitch, which has to be perfect, mind you, otherwise your beads are crooked, you add a bead. It was like the most beautiful zipper I think I've ever done. And I've never done one since, but it was fun. All right, here we go. We're going to set this aside and we're moving on to creating our zipper back of the pillow. All right, so we are going to now grab our remaining piece of fabric to create our back zipper. So, and then get your zipper as well. Grab your zipper as well. So we want to press, starch and press the two back pieces, and they're not going this way. They're actually going this way. I think maybe they are. Starch and press the back two-piece fabric pieces. No, it's just a single long edge. Okay. Each piece is separate. Blah, I lost it there for a minute, but I've got it back now. Don't worry. All right. And then what we're going to do is we're going to press 1/4 of an inch to the wrong side of the fabric. So you're going to have plenty. 1/4 of an inch sometimes is a hard thing to press. If you want to make it 3/8 of an inch, you will still have plenty of space. And you're going to have to resort to my directions because they have you doing this on a lace zipper. Excuse me. And your kits do not have a lace zipper. So we're not going to top stitch because unless you want your zipper tape to show on the outside. So for a lace zipper, you would. For this one, you don't. So we are going to press one edge of each of these two large pieces under 1/4 of an inch to the best of your ability. If 1/4 of an inch, because I mean, look, you've got plenty to do your pillow. So don't worry if it's a little bit bigger than that. Or 3/8 of an inch, whatever's easiest for you to actually press somewhat consistently. This is where one of those hot rulers comes in really well. Because you can, I'll grab it too. I think there's one in the basket over here. All right, so with a hot ruler, you can set it underneath there. I'll do it on the other side. So if I wanted like a 1/2 inch seam allowance, I could set my hot ruler there and then fold my fabric to where it's a 1/2 inch. And what's nice about that, or if I wanted to do 1/4, I'm not going to do 1/4. I'm going to do it a little bit bigger than 1/4 because it always burns my fingers. You can just bring it in and then you can press right on the ruler. So I'll use this on this other half. And I'll try to do a perfect 1/4 inch. We'll see. So I'm going to start that with, having the 1/4 inch. And then I'm going to bring this over and then start pressing. And you can press right on the ruler. That's why they call it a hot ruler, is you can press right on that ruler. Ooh, look at that. Pretty. I'll redo the other side too, because this is perfect. This is pretty. But if you don't have a hot ruler, don't worry about it. All right, so I'm gonna stick that back in there. Make sure the other end is at 1/4 of an inch. And again, I can press on it because it is a hot ruler. That's why they call it a hot ruler. All right, now I'm gonna turn this over, press it from the front and use my clapper on it. I gotta admit, that's pretty straight, huh? Do not top stitch this if you are doing, if you are following me for your zipper installation. If you have a lace zipper and you want to sew the lace zipper, you can go ahead and top stitch this. The reason that they're having you top stitch it for a lace zipper is this zipper sits underneath, all right? Like a traditional zipper. Your lace zipper sits on the top. So you really have to have some stitching on that fabric first. For us, with this zipper, we do not. So I'm going to put that over there. And I know I have plenty of fabric here, so I'm not going to bother pressing out where I didn't press it perfect, and I'll just use the other side here. So again, I am showing you how to use a hot ruler, which I do have and use a lot at home. And then from the front side, I'll put this down and hit it again. And then hit it with my clapper. All right, so go ahead and grab your 1/8 of an inch tape if you have that. If not, you can use spray based. You can use pins if you want. We're going to put both sides of the zipper on at one time by using some tape. And right now, it doesn't matter which end you point the pull at because this is reversible. It doesn't matter. It'll be the right side, wrong side when we actually get it onto the pillow. If you look really close at your zipper, you'll see that right in here. Yep. I'm really struggling with this thing today. I keep grabbing it with the chair, so I apologize if you are getting motion sickness. If you look at the zipper, there's a line like right here. And that's about where we want to kind of gear to get our stitching, somewhere in that line area, with that line area there. But we want this slightly above it. All right. But what we don't want to do is bump this right up against the teeth of the zipper. If we do that, it's going to catch when we try to zip and unzip. So, and I've got my fabric about even, so I have kind of the same amount at each end. And again, right now it does not matter where you are in the process, you know, where you're, if you're doing the zipper pulls here or there. I will tell you though, let's try and get it so that you do keep your zipper stop. Because I'll tell you what, they didn't have me keep a zipper stop with the lace one, and it's really kind of hard to get it to stop. So you're going to want to, keep that zipper stop on the tape at the end that has the zipper pull. All right. So now with my 1/8 of an inch tape, I'm going to put it on my fabric. And I'm not going to put it the entire length because I won't need it the entire length. And I'm going to go more towards the bottom of my fold than right at the top of my fold.
Michelle, can you use steam seam tape here if you don't have
No, because you don't want to steam it down.
Okay.
What you can use is you can use a little spray based if you have that. Yeah, the 1/8 of an inch basting tape. To be honest with you, I'll tell you how much I use this. I buy rolls like this. That's how often I use 1/8 of an inch because it's really easy to hide in the seam allowance. You don't have to pull it out. Steam a seam, you have to iron to make it stick, which means that it's permanent. If you don't get it on there right, it's going to be permanent. And plus your zipper tape right here isn't wide enough for 1/4 inch seam of steam. It's going to end up off the edge. So I would say no, use pins if that's the only thing that you have to work with. You could use spray based. You could use, I'm trying to think of what else you could use. I'm just going to open this a little bit for my first placement. So to get that tape off, the protective paper off, I'm just going to take my stiletto and then just roll it around along the side edge here. And I should be able to grab the edge of the paper, leaving the tape behind. And then I'm going to place the first part to begin with. So I'm going to come close down here so you can see it. All right, so I want to keep that. And I have to have, you know, enough a seam allowance to stitch it around it. So I'm going to start. Remember, I don't want to be right up on the zipper. I'm going to give it like 1/8 of an inch there. All right. Once I've done that, I can go ahead and zip it back up, which makes it easier to place the rest of it. And then I'm going to just pull forward and grab another. It hasn't? No. Okay. Yeah, right. So now all I have to do is just watch that my placement is about even. The nice things about this is there are no pins to remove. There's nothing, once this goes down to stitch, you just stitch. That's it. And then all the way to the end here.
Michelle, does the shop carry that basting?
Yeah, we do. Yeah. You can use it for anything, any seam you want to hold together. That you don't want to have the, sometimes pins aren't always the answer. Pins aren't always the answer if, first of all, if it was some kind of lightweight fabric, pins would be miserable because it would poke big holes in it. And the other thing is when you stitch with pins, you have to stop to remove them. As you're stitching. With this, you do not. All right. So if I look at this, it should be about even. Again, is it couture or costume? It should be about even. I don't have any tape over here. That's why it's kind of drooping. All right, so I've got one side taped. Now I'm just going to turn it over and tape the other side. That way I can just stitch. I don't have to come back and do this again. If you'd rather put the tape on the zipper, you can do that as well. Since I'm going to try to tape out towards the outside edge, if that's what I'm going to do. If I want to do that, I want to go towards the outside edge of the zipper. Again, it doesn't matter. Either one works. I just want to try, if I can, I want to try to avoid my stitching line. If I can't, it's fine. It won't hurt anything. You might end up with a gummed up needle, but this is not enough of it to give you a gummed up needle. You'd have to use a lot of it. And then a gummed up needle is really not an issue if you have alcohol pads near your machine. So some of my non-sewing favorite things are, my husband used to work in a hospital. So adhesive tape remover pads. What those are, what they use in the hospital for people that have really thin skin so that they don't hurt them when they pull the bandages off or the tape off. You can get those in a box of 100, the little pads on Amazon. You don't even have to know somebody in the medical field anymore. The other one is alcohol prep wipes. Again, small 100 box. They look like little lens cleaner packets, both of them. And that should be like, for me, that is an integral part of my sewing kit. It goes in, probably before anything else because it solves any problem with gummed needle. I don't have to stop. All right, so right now I'm just trying to make this even up here at the end. Doesn't have to be perfect, but it should be pretty doggone close. And then I'm going to close the zipper just to make sure. And it looks pretty good. So I'm going to continue on. Schofield.
A question, Michelle.
Yeah.
So our zipper that we got in there is like twice as long as the piece of fabric we got.
No, your fabric is 12 inches. You're not folding it in half. Do not fold it in half. If you fold it in half, that's wrong. You have 2 single layers of fabric. So this is how it should look. This is the excess you should have.
Oh, mine was 2 squares, no, not 2 rectangles. in the
Oh.
kit.
Okay, we had one other kit like that. So, I'm not quite sure how that happened. So, give us, send me an email after the class and, we'll recut and resend you fabric if you're out of town, okay? We
Okay.
had one other kit that ended up like that and I'm not sure what happened. So no, you
Okay.
should have 2 12 by 7 or so pieces of fabric.
Yeah,
All
they're
right.
not that big.
Okay.
Okay. So
All
I'll
right.
just watch.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so sorry. We had one other lady that had that happen and we're not quite sure how that happened, but you know, we cut an enormous amount of kits, so sometimes it happens. All right. So this is what I should look like. And I've got my zipper down the middle. Again, it doesn't matter which side the pull is at right now because it'll matter when we put it on. So I'm going to take this over to the machine now carefully and switch to my zipper foot. Bring those clips out over here. Sorry, I've got you over there by the garbage can. I don't know what my problem is with the chair today and catching the camera arm. All right, so this is what I look like. I'm going to take my my regular foot off. And I'll go ahead and use the foot that came with your machine, the J foot. So what I want to do is I want to let the edge of this foot guide along the edge of the zipper tape. And you can see that my needle is going to be a little closer in there. Let me get closer. Again, normally my other one, the white one would be my, what is the name of the zipper tape? So it's a 1/8 inch basting tape. It's not zipper tape, it's basting tape. I'm just gonna pop this foot on. All right, so right now I'm going down this side of the zipper. When I go down the other side, I'm not gonna flip it around and go the other way because that pushes fabric like this. I took all this time to tape and make sure that I had it pretty even. So I wanna make sure that it stays pretty even. So when I get done with this, I'm gonna come back up and just go down the other side of this. So I'm just gonna open my zipper a little bit just so I can get started because of that zipper pull. And I'm gonna put the edge of my foot is gonna go against the edge of the zipper tape. So you can see where it's gonna fit right around and it's gonna actually bump right up against the teeth. And then I'm gonna move my stitch over into left needle position and I can see where it's going to drop. So all the way, let me see if I'll zoom in. I can do it once. Right now, that's how it should be. So the edge, let me get my stiletto so I can have a pointy thing. The edge here of your foot should be riding along the teeth of your zipper as you go along. I think that this is far left needle position, and I think this is going to be too close to the edge of the fabric. So I'm going to bring that up. Oops. Up, up, needle up, up, up. There we go. And I'm going to move it over to needle position left, right, shift 1. So it looks like this. Beep. So I've just moved it. It's not all the way to the left because I want a little bit more seam allowance, but you control that. I'm going to try to leave it in the zoomed in mode for just this one side. It's hard though, because I have to kind of manage the camera and the zoom at the same time, the zoom at the how big the picture is. All right, so I'm going to start stitching slowly. And I'm going to do a couple of back stitches. My stitch length is 3.5. I'm not making a quilt. And then so the edge of my foot there, right here, is following along the zipper tape. Now that I've gotten started, I can take my zipper pull and pull it up and out of the way so that it's at the top again. And I can continue on all the way down. So all I have to do is I have to keep the edge of my foot there even with the zipper tape right here.
Michelle, if you were using the skinny zipper foot that you like, what would you line it
You're
up
going to
with?
do the same thing. You're going to put the edge of the foot. So I'll do it on the other side, but I can't really stop in the middle now, but I'll use that one on the other side. How's that?
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh. So I'm just keeping the edge of that foot right up against the edge of the teeth. And then I have a nice top stitch at the edge, and I'm just sewing off the edge because, you know, it's going to get cut off anyway. All right. So if you are continuing on with this zipper foot, you're going to come back up to the top. You're going to open up the zipper a little bit. And now what you're going to do is pull.
Hey, oh, Michelle, wait, yeah, thanks.
Pull the zipper foot off and then just switch it to the other side. And then you're going to use your mirror image key so that you can move the stitch, because right now it's going to hit in the middle of the foot. You're going to use your mirror image key, which is this one right here, to move it to the other side of your foot. All right. So the other zipper foot. Let me find it. It's in my pile. All right, so with this zipper foot, I really like this one. I've liked this one since it came out. I really wanted one that was like this. So I'm going to take this off, and notice that with this one, I wouldn't have to actually take the foot off at all, because all I have to do is mirror image my stitch. And so for this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the edge of the foot be on the edge of my fabric. And I can get the same thing. So I want that's why I tape my fabric, so that the fabric stays consistent. And I just keep, instead of being the edge of my foot being up against the zipper, because this one's big. This one's not. So I just go with it being up against the edge of my fabric. Oh, thank you. Hey, your stuff is on my back desk there. You know, the stuff that you brought in for the, oh, it's you. It's not Dana. How are you? I'm sorry, ladies. Come here.
I just came in for a second.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. Okay. I'll see you next Wednesday, I think,
Oh,
if
okay.
everything goes all right.
All right. She okay? She better?
I don't know.
Okay. We'll talk.
Yeah, we'll talk.
All right. I'm like, first Lori come in and first Dana came in and scared the bejesus out of me. All right, so the same thing. I just like this one because I just read the edge of the foot against the edge of the fabric rather than against the edge of the zipper. And again, and here's the other reason that I like it. All right. Look how easy it is to move the zipper around it. And plus, even if the zipper's at the end, then it's okay. Because the foot is narrow enough, it goes around it. But you guys know I love to do bags, and I use leather and vinyl and suede and all that kind of stuff a lot. So for me to have this kind of a zipper foot's better because this one's actually non-stick. The other one is not. All right. All right. So let's take this over to the other part of our project, and then we can get this put on. You're almost done. And you've done spectacularly, ladies. All right, I got my iron on because I want to make sure I give it a little press. And you can go ahead and put your J-foot back on. All right. So you can see that you're going to have plenty to actually make that, make the back, to put the back on. So what we want to do is I want you to create a zipper stop, because one of the things I noticed with doing it as the directions said, they had me, first of all, they had me just cut the metal parts off. And then I'm like, I look at this and go, if I had to take that pillow form out and more times, that's not going to work. It's going to come away from the seam here. So that's why I had you leave some of this up here for your zipper stop. So that doesn't happen. You're going to be sewing on the outside a little bit. But what I want you to do is I want you to come in now over here, because we're going to end up cutting this off in the seam allowance. I want you to come in about 1/2 inch from that edge, maybe even 3/4 of an inch, and make yourself a little zipper stop. So we're going to do it together. And so you really don't need all the way from edge to edge for this zipper. So truly, if that was the only issue that I had, is I could have had fabric here and had a nice finish at both ends, because the pillow form itself pushes against that seam allowance. So it's not really that secure. I mean, it's a pillow, it'll be fine, but I would have liked it if I had like fabric there, like a zipper tab or something, which normally is what I would do, is add a tab so that I'm not sewing on zipper tape when I'm sewing that final seam. But we are, but I am going to have you make a stop here so that when we cut this edge off and we trim it around the seam allowance, that you still have a zipper that doesn't come out of your seam. So I'm going to pop over to the machine really quick. And here's what I want you to do is I want you to come in. Our seam allowance is 1/4 of an inch. So I want you to come in at least 1/2 inch here. And then I want you to select a zigzag stitch. I'm going to select stitch 1-09. So it's 1-09. And I think a 3-5 in the width will probably cover around the zipper coil. That's all I really need to cover here, is around the zipper coil. That looks pretty good. I'm just hand walking it with the wheel. Nope, I need a little bit wider. So I'm going to do, how about if I do 4-5? That works. All right. Now I want you to reduce the stitch length. So we're almost making it like a bar tack. We aren't going to make very much. We just want a little bit. And then I want you to slowly stitch side to side. It's not going to move. It's going to stitch in place because we have a really short stitch length. And then just touch your fixed stitch, which is this button right here, and have it tie a knot for you. So what this means is you'll be able to do your seam allowance, cut the excess off here, and you'll still have this zipper stop that will prevent the stress at either end of that zipper when you open the pillow. Pretty sweet, huh? I try to think of everything. I missed the spot, so. All right. This is our last thing, our last part. All right. So I want you to look at your pillow this way. Put your zipper pull to the left, and then put your pillow on top of it. So what we want is we want the zipper pull to be to the left side of the pillow closed. All right. And then you're just going to place your pillow that you did on top of it. Now, you can make quarter markings if you want, but It really doesn't matter if you're right smack in the middle or not. The pillow just has to go into it. But if you want it smack in the middle, fold it in half, position it, and then set it on top. Now with this, you can tape it, you can pin it, or you can clip at the sides. It's not really going to go anywhere. When you are at where your zipper pull is, go ahead and make sure your zipper pull is pointing this way, and you might want to open it just a little bit, just so you don't hit it. And then bring these as close together as you can. Okay. And then just clip. And then we're just going to smooth this out as best you can. I'm going to use my stiletto, but I will tell you that there were a few parts where the gathering, the back isn't as big as the dimension around the circumference of the piece that we use for the ruffle, but it's still going to be perfect. All right, I'll meet you over there. I'm going to put up my 1/4 inch stitch using my J-foot. So that means I'm going to start with either that number P, remember that number P. So that's 130, which moves my needle position over. If you don't have that, you have a way to move your needle position. So 3-5 is center needle position. You want to move your needle to the right to needle position. So 3-5, 4, 4-5, 5-5-5. So 3-5 to 5-5. You want to move your needle position that way. And that's going to give you a 1/4 inch with your J foot. I don't have a 1/4 inch foot anymore. I don't need one. The J foot actually does a better job. All right, so I'm going to start. I want to make sure I have some place that I can actually do a back stitch. Double check that your zipper pull is not anywhere near your seam allowance, so you don't have a boo-boo, a mishap. So that's going to definitely have a little wiggle there, and that's okay. All right, done sewing. Okay, so I'm going to press this, trim it, press it, and turn it. Around the outside of my pillow, I use pinking shears because you have fabric that's larger that when you turn it has to be smaller. If you want your curves nice and smooth, you will trim it with pinking shears. If you're okay that this is a pillow and not couture, just trim it at 1/4 inch. And I'm sure that you will like it just fine. All right. All right, so reach in there and open that zipper. And turn it inside out. I'm gonna press it. Let's press it first. I'm jumping the gun here. And again, you can use, if you don't have printing shears, you can notch it. Just kind of eases that fabric that's trying to fold. Where you're making the circle's larger when it's turned inside out. The outside edges there, the seam allowance is larger than the inside, so it kind of bunches up. But with a pillow in it, it likely won't make a difference. All right, so now I've got a stop here that I put in. You don't even see it, but there's all that stress that would be on this seam here is removed because the zipper can't open any further than that. So, and then over on this end, then when I close the zipper, it's going to stop right here. If you want to, you can actually even take this over now. And you can just do a little zigzag here so that you close it more tightly there. Not necessary though. Excuse me. And then we are done. So I'll take this one out. So on this, did I pink it? I did. So you can see that on this one, I did pink the edges. All right, so I'm going to open this all the way. I'm going to slip the pillow into it. Oops. Let's put the tag down at the bottom, I guess. You know, I love how these pillows, and some of you have probably noticed it, but I guess I didn't notice it before. These little Kimberbell pillows come in and there's like every bit of air is sucked out of it. So it's like this little flat compartment. It reminds me of MREs, or meals ready to eat, that, you know, are like kind of, you know, compressed, and then you open the bag and it like explodes out. All right, push it down. See, no stress over here. This one's got stress on that one side, and the same thing over here. You won't see stress on the other side as well because it's going to stop before it gets to the edge. So no stress on that other seam either. Enjoy. What do I have here? Okay, I need to trim that. All right, ladies, thank you so much for joining me today. Show zipper at both ends again. Okay, so this is zipper at one end. It has a zipper stop that we created. Here's zipper at the other end. You do see some, you know, some of the fabric in there. What you can do is add fabric, you know, put a piece of fabric to cover that. But what you won't see is like what's happening here with this one. So when I close this other one, this is the part I did not like, because I try and follow the directions, right? This is the one I didn't like, because when I come here, when it's turned right side out, I may not see a little bit of the pillow, but what I do see is a zipper that's trying to pull away from the seam because it's too, yeah, it's not, so this will avoid that, those issues where it comes apart. All right, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thanks,
Everybody
Michelle.
have a amazing rest of your day, and thank you for spending time with me today. Stitching, I always love it when I can stitch with you guys.
Thank
And I
you.
hope you enjoyed it. Yes.
Thanks, Michelle. Great as
You're
always.
welcome. So if you got a kit that has something that wasn't right, please send me an email. Michelle A1 Sew, so MICHELLE A1 Sew @gmail, and I'll make sure that we get the right sized pieces sent out to you. Okay, thank you everyone. Bye bye.